It's the MyMichelleLive podcast.
Looking for the God story and news of the day. My Michelle Live News. Here's Michelle.
Hey, good afternoon. I hope you can hear everything all right because, as you can see, I'm not at home. This beautiful backdrop of water here in Fort Myers, Florida. I am enjoying the weather, and yet I get away, and it's almost 100 degrees back in my hometown there of Seattle, Washington. Today, we're going to talk about something weirder than 100-degree weather and no rain in Seattle, Washington. Last August, the Pentagon established the Unified Aerial Phenomena Task Force. Its entire purpose for being is to look into observations of unknown flying aircrafts. Weird things up in the sky. Now, this month, a very highly anticipated report is due to come out by the end of June 2020, talking about unidentified flying objects or UFOs. On this news and views report, we're going to talk about what we know so far, what we anticipate is going to come out in this report, what's been leaked, but also, of course, come on, this is My Michelle Live. What do we do here? We look at the deeper story, the God story. So today, on News and Views from My Michelle Live, God, UFOs, and you. And joining us in this off the charts kind of interesting topic to help bring into the discussion the God story is our beloved Rabbi Yitzhak Adlerstein, Director of Interfaith Affairs at the Simon Wiesenthal Center. And he's going to give us a view from Jerusalem. Rabbi, how do you like my view from Fort Myers?
Amazing. It's second only to the view from here of Jerusalem, of which there is nothing to compete.
Which I would love to see, but as you have turnover government, interesting things happening with your government, you're also kind of closing things down for a little bit from visitors. And we were saying just before the broadcast, you have 3 sets of grandchildren that are just waiting to come and get spoiled.
That is true. But it does mean that people have a lot more time to plan their full visits here. For those of you who are concerned about Israel and bond with Israel, this is certainly a time when you should be hopefully thinking about a visit here, because so many people's jobs rely on tourism, and they've had nothing for the last 2 years, and it would really be a great kiss on the forehead for people to start planning group visits, individual visits, and we'd love to greet you here.
Well, I will look forward to doing that when things are kind of opened up. I will be one of the first people, I think, on the plane. I've been looking forward to it for some time. And so you have extra time on your hands to look up into the sky. And let me just ask, first of all, what I'd like to do today is we're going to talk about what's real. We're going to talk about the real likelihood of what this report on UFOs is going to find. We're going to talk about what's real in the report, and then we're going to talk about if UFOs are a real threat to the God story. So we'll take that on. But my first question to you before we get into the meat of our discussion, Rabbi, is: have you ever seen a UFO or met an alien?
Well, I'm not at liberty to say everything that I've seen, but after conferring with Elvis and Lucy in the last couple of days, we had a couple of drinks together, and they told me not to worry about it.
So it's all good.
Well, you can tell you've known me for a while. I am a hardcore cynic. I'm one of the last people on earth to be convinced of anything. I'm much more interested in the story of why people think that if we find aliens, it's somehow a threat to God. and belief in God. But I don't want to cramp your style.
Okay,
So
so we will get to that, but let's set the stage, Rabbi. Congress ordered this task force and reported that they were going to give this big report after there's been numerous things coming in talking about these weird happenings in the sky. I was going to see if I could actually find um, a soundbite that I wanted to play that is just an example. And here it is. I hope that you're able to hear it because, again, I am in Fort Myers and, everything's on laptop right now. So let's just take a listen.
My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots to the west. Look at that thing, dude.
They're looking at an unidentified aerial phenomenon and they're going, what is that? There's just something strange. So it's a little bit distorted, but that's, they're looking at this crazy thing and they're going, what is going on out there? These are reports from U.S. military of vehicles seen moving erratically in the sky. And the report was released to Congress, this UFO report, Rabbi, just to get our listeners and viewers caught up. It was already released to Congress, but let's be frank. An unnamed official did tell the U.S. media that the report doesn't seem to have found evidence of alien activity. And yet they also didn't rule it out. So I think my first question to you is, why all of this interest? What are we really looking for? Why do we have such an interest in UFOs? I mean, I am a sci-fi geek. There's very few sci-fi books or movies that I haven't seen, and I love it and I just eat it up. But we are fascinated with what is there something out there? What are we really looking for? Why the obsession?
well, my personal theory is, and I'm going to be a little bit myopic here. I think a lot of people are uncomfortable with the notion of man being the center of the universe, which is something that people have thought about from pretty much the beginning of recorded time. We've thought about that in different ways, but being the center of the universe puts a certain amount of responsibility on us. And I think a lot of people would like to say, hey, we're not really so unique, we're so special. Why should we think of ourselves as being privileged just because we're Homo sapiens on this rather ununique planet and tucked away on an obscure solar system and corner
Yeah.
of the universe? There gotta be more out there, or there had to have been more that evolved out there, or just the mystique of the unknown. But and to a large extent, I think a lot of that is escapism. And I did share your passion for sci-fi a long time ago, so I understand it. I don't want to put it down. I also saw it, but I guess as I got older and had more kids and more grandchildren, I became much more focused on what we can do in the here and now. There may be intelligent life out there. We certainly know that there are unintelligent creatures who seem to come from outer space, but most of them sit in Congress. But it's just a distraction. To me, it's a distraction, Michelle. I hope you'll still talk to me. It's a distraction because there's so much we need to do in the here and now. We don't have time to speculate.
We have enough problems on our own planet before we start worrying about other planets. But I think
I will, if I have another half a minute at the mic, I will tell you. I'm
yes.
a little too harsh because some of the greatest rabbis of hundreds of years ago, close to 800 years ago, speculated about the same issue. And they came from it, they came at it even from a theological standpoint. They said the universe is so vast. There's so many of those stars out there, and they didn't know the half of it, or the 10th or 100th of it.
That's true. That's true.
That we're the only ones out here.
And
God knows what he's doing. It's not just random. There has to be a purpose for all of those things out there. And maybe there isn't life there, but they didn't obsess about it. And so,
well put. But those rabbis are not alone. In the Christian faith, we tend to idolize C.S. Lewis, and he wrote once, "How can we, without absurd arrogance, believe ourselves to be uniquely favored? How could we do that?" And yet, when we look at science, and we can see that maybe we are. I think that we may be looking for something deeper, and I just wanted to give you something that I learned fairly recently. I want our listening audience to think about this. Now, not to say, and we'll get into what does it mean if we find extraterrestrial life? What does that mean to the planet? And what does that mean to the whole God story? Does that just, kick God out? But way back in 1995, Rabbi, astronomers discovered the first exoplanet, or the first planet rather, orbiting a nuclear burning star. And at that time, back in 1995, which, but nonetheless, back in 1995, they predicted that we were going to find all kinds of planets just like, and solar systems just like ours. But here's the crazy thing. Since then, all these years later, what we have 1,760 exoplanets. Do you know what we have not found? Not a single one is like any of the planets in our solar system. We haven't found a match to any of our 8 planets. That is an amazing discovery, right there. Wow. Each one of our 8 planets in our solar system have a crucial role, we found, in making advanced life possible on planet Earth. So it would seem in turn that the thought is that it takes the whole universe to support life on our planet. The likelihood of having what we have here is extraordinary. They even believe that there was an additional planet in our universe that collided with Earth, which created where water is the third most abundant substance in the universe. And they believe that water covered the surface of the Earth at one point, and the collision with this planet is what caused our atmosphere and the and the moon, and the relation between the moon and the Earth is absolutely unique in the universe. And while waters covered the surface of the Earth, or I don't know Genesis, but this is what we're finding now, which shows kind of a gorgeous uniqueness of our planet. And that's not to say, again, that maybe we might not find life out there. But I think in our search for life out there, Rabbi, what we are truly, truly looking for is an extraterrestrial life that we were created with a void to know, and that's God.
I'll drink to that. Another way of packaging that is that for so many centuries, man depicted himself literally as the center of the universe. You have this earth that's it just seemed evident to everybody that we're not the center of the universe. In fact, we revolve around the sun, and the sun isn't the center of anything. And there were people who thought this is the end of the philosophical universe. A famous poem by John Donne called, like everything has now fallen into question. Relationships have changed because what was a mainstay of our belief is God. And what you just did, Michelle, in the last couple of minutes is said, what we discovered is you don't have to be at the geographic center of anything to be the center of the universe. If you find, as you put it so beautifully, it may take an entire universe to produce one special place where man could come into existence and then more spectacularly be seen as significant enough to be endowed by its creator with a soul. And that's really what I think we're chasing and what really is at the bottom of this. It's really the same, in my mind, it's the same question as, well, if robots get smart enough, will they be human? Will that prove that there's nothing like a soul? Or alternatively, when they get that intelligent, will they have souls? No, stupid. Souls are not equivalent to intelligence. They're not the same thing. We can find machines that'll be smarter. What'll determine whether something has a soul or not is whether God decides to endow that creature with a soul. And if I pass 10 different aliens in the street next week because they finally decide they tell me they never heard of the Bible, never heard of it, they don't know about God or anything, I'll say, boy, are we lucky because God chose us.
That's glorious. When you think of putting it in the God perspective, it is really hard for us to think that we're special. But the thought that God chooses to interact with us does put us on a special plane. We are, as I said, in my opinion, searching for something in the great beyond because we know there is something out there. Now, this is interesting as we go back to this report that Congress was able to look at and is going to be released in June. The Pentagon has been quietly gathering data on UFOs since at least 2007 of part of the military's kind of little known advanced aerospace threat identification program that I was made aware of only a few years ago. And it's been getting a lot more press. Do you remember, Rabbi, when Hillary Clinton's campaign manager, John Podesta, said, and he was a longtime UFO geek, he said that this during her 2016 campaign, that she would release classified government reports on aliens if she were elected. And even former President Barack Obama was on a Late Show with James Corden, and he said that when he came into office, one of the first things he did was say, "Oh, okay, guys, is there a lab somewhere where we're keeping the alien specimens and spaceship?" And he said, they did a little bit of research, and the answer was actually no. Some of the folks that leaked information on this report said, they didn't find any evidence of UFOs, but they're keeping that door open. So we do indeed have this fascination in science fiction, Rabbi. We kind of know that sci-fi and the idea of science fiction and traveling beyond the stars has been used to say, see, there really is no God. We are our own gods. We are the masters of the universe. But as you alluded to, not necessarily so.
And the more I listen to you, the more I'm starting to agree with you, but also getting more frustrated. I think
people get that sometimes.
They're looking.
Talk to my kids.
For the thing that's beyond. They kind of sense that there's something out there that's bigger than myself, the individual, or bigger than all of mankind. What's frustrating to me about that is, why are people looking to the magical and mysterious beyond when so many of us can find out so quickly what that specialness is and how it can enrich our lives? Those of us who are part of the Judeo-Christian legacy and believe in a Bible, which means as you said, the greatest mystery of life really is why God would want to communicate with us, and why he chose to, why a perfect God who has no needs would nonetheless say, this is my project for the X number of future millennia, even though time doesn't exist for me either. Try to figure all that out, but it's there and it's true. And we don't need to go so far to find confirmation of our instincts that there's something more out there. We just need to engage God, and he's there and he's listening to us. And whether we make the connection is not up to the Pentagon. It's up to each of us as individuals. So it's frustrating, this quest. So many people look for things that are right at their doorstep instead of looking in the obvious place.
And what if we can look at God's creation and see that of all the beauty, the uniqueness, and I talked about the uniqueness of the earth in the universe that we're finding scientifically, but even the uniqueness on the earth with all of the lushness, the gorgeousness, the beauty, the stunning, vibrant colors, the abundance of differing species, all of this is stunning, and yet we as man stand unique among all of these things. We have a grand uniqueness. It's as though God, in all of the things that we know that he's created, we may very well be his magnum opus. We may be his a masterpiece, something that he finds precious and unique among all of the glory that we see in space and the microcosms of earth. In that, there's a beautiful story, a story of redemption, a story of relationship, a story that doesn't, as you say, need to travel beyond the stars to find something out of this world.
Exactly. And not that when you come to that conclusion that you've solved the mystery, because the questions are still there. Like, what does God find so important about us, and what does it do for him? And there can't be an absolute answer to that, because a perfect God you can't do anything for. So this somehow, all of our existence and all of our specialness is somehow an outgrowth of what God is, not for any goals or plans, because he doesn't have needs like we do. But there are things that are part of what he is, and that calls for expression of that in the creation of a being that is sort of separate from himself, but so connected at the same time, that this being should be allowed to come closer yet by spending this wonderful journey on earth and making something of ourselves, so that we become more godlike and can therefore have a kind of connection with him that is unimaginable in our lives here, even though there's a lot of great stuff we can do here. That's what life is about. At least that's what life is about, according to the Jewish take. And in the meantime, that mission is not just about, hey, we're here and we thank God, here's another Hosanna, because there is a plan, because this perfect God,
There is something
desires to be close to his creatures. And the task of man is to allow him in. And what man can do is take a look at all of this beautiful stuff, and then take a look at some of the not beautiful stuff, and say, this doesn't mean that there are two gods, like some of the ancients believed or the Zoroastrians believed. And it doesn't mean that there's no God, as so many today would have us. But we sense his reality, and we know him, and we speak with him. And our job is to make God one on earth, to take all of the disparate parts of what we sense about him and realize that they all come from this one incredible source that we can't wrap our heads around entirely, but has chosen to communicate with us and allows us to talk to him, and he talks to us.
I wonder then, in our quest for looking at what may lie beyond, uh, we are created with this insatiable curiosity to discover the height and depth, the breadth of God is truly undiscoverable. But yet, I believe that he reveals himself in his creation. We can see parts of him. We can know God more through his word, but also through what he's made, through his creation. We can know more of him. And so I think we have this insatiable need to delve into the tiny and to explore the great beyond, to ask these questions. But we also, according to a biblical narrative, have in this universe released a fallen nature that rebels against God. And so I think we do need we have this need of God, but we can try to fill it with, well, what could it be other than God? And no matter how far we go down the scientific road and we see more and more evidence of intelligent design, we still have to say, no, 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 it can't be, because there's something within us that fights. Maybe what I hear you saying, or at least what my takeaway is today, Rabbi, is that somewhere in our life, we may need to sit back and look for that God story. We might need to sit back and, instead of fighting and struggling and searching, which there's nothing wrong with, still take a moment and really look for what is real and what is truth. Looking for that God story. Your thoughts?
Yeah, this is, of course, the part of what God made us with, this spirit that wants to connect with him, but at the same time is autonomous, just like he is. So it rebels against being pushed around. So sometimes it will fight the obvious and come up with all kinds of created stories in order to avoid the idea or the responsibility of expressing gratitude to the being
Oof.
that put us here. That's a big one. A lot of people just find, well, if he's really there and he was with me from the moment of conception on, and sticks with me and has for decades, and I'm crushed by the debt that I owe him. And yet, in our different ways, that's not what God wants. God wants the relationship without crushing us with this sense of obligation. Gratitude is terrific. Without gratitude towards God, we get nowhere to starting a relationship. But we can't be overcome with it. And sometimes what we're seeing with people's concern with what's out there and beyond the universe is a kind of escapism when
Wow.
when is so close at hand, if we choose to open our eyes to it. In the end, it becomes as simple as what the Bible said. I've placed before you today life and death. Choose life. What that means is that for people, it's a real choice. People have the capacity, and God warns against it. It's not just a couple of masochists out there who will choose death, but people, God puts us in a position where we can find the evidence for him, and we can turn our backs to it and deny him. And he deliberately gives us that free choice, because without exercising that choice, we're not getting any closer to him. But we can have this ability to both see it, to choose life, to choose death. And we have to be urged and told, no, make sure you make the right decision. And it has to be a decision. It can't just be, I'll float in between and we'll see where God pushes my canoe. by God not to be the one sitting the fence straddler. We have to be able to commit. It's sometimes painful to understand how vulnerable we are and how small we are and how without God our lives are can be so ephemeral, so quickly passing, and so meaningless. But how beautiful it can be if we make the right choice.
I'm thinking of the scripture in Psalm 145 that the Lord is near to all who call on him, to all who call on him in truth. Uh, that may be what we're really looking for to fill that void. But as we do talk about this UFO report that's going to be released and all of the news and hullabaloo and people saying, oh, there's weird things in the sky. Yeah, have you seen technology lately? And how many drones are there out there, right? But let's just for a moment assume, for the sake of argument, that we are being visited by life on other planets, which, okay, I do have to digress. If we are that insignificant, then the likelihood of someone really caring and finding us would be remote. But nonetheless, let's just, for the sake of argument, you alluded to something I thought was just bringing it back to find joy where you're at before you're looking for fulfillment out there somewhere else. And that is okay. That doesn't really change the God story. It just gives us the opportunity, I think, as C.S. Lewis had referred to when I had quoted that he said, oh, you know what, this might actually be kind of arrogant to think that we're alone in the universe. And yet, he said, it may give us the opportunity to share a loving God with a planet that may not have heard of it before. And that's something you alluded to as well. It just, no matter what the scenario, it goes back to the great I am. God is. He is.
And as much as I love C.S. Lewis, and I really do, I'm not going to be able to agree with him about this. I don't think it's arrogance at all. It would be arrogant if we knew the story. But in the words of Psalms, I don't remember the number. You probably do this better than I do. V'tachsarehu ma'at me'elokim. You have created him just a little bit less than godly. We didn't do that. He did. It would be arrogant for us to presume that about ourselves. But that's not what happened. He was the one who tapped Adam on the shoulder and said, hey, Adam, you're not alone. Guess what? I created you. And I did not create you to be my servant or my plaything. I created you to have a relationship with you and to redeem the future mankind by making choices that will elevate you and become more like you, become more like me. It's only arrogant if we choose it for ourselves, not if God says, without me, you're absolutely nothing. But I have this task. I'm the one who's decided that you're special. You had nothing to do with it. That's not arrogance.
It's true. And that's really what we're looking for in this report. What's the truth? What's the 411? What's going on out there? Well, when you really get down to it, oh yeah, that's all interesting and everything, and maybe as entertaining as watching a Doctor Who episode. But what we're really looking for is truth. And I think we got to the God story. This has been pretty inspirational because it really brings it home. I have all of the glory of the entire universe in the relationship that I have with a real amazing God who created it all. That is outstanding. We've been talking with our beloved Rabbi Yitzhak Adlerstein, a director.
I'm going to have to run. My UFO is double parked.
Oh, gee, let's get you off here then. It has been such a pleasure.